Hey everyone, it's Chat with Mac. Saturday. It's Chat with Mac. We're glad to have you. For those of you that have been watching our podcast here, thank you so much. We really appreciate you. Please subscribe. Tell everybody about what we're doing. We're doing some good stuff here for everyone that are new to what we do. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Happy Saturday, Nadine. It's interesting, So Microsoft found out that there is a way to manipulate Bing search results and access Outlook email accounts. And I remember when I when I saw this, I'm like, how the hell are if I search in Bing, you're able to get access, and possibly gain access to some very sensitive information in my email account. How does this? Maybe you could break it down to us, normal people, how this works, because that's
Yeah.
crazy.
So so Bing has an integration with your Office 365 account. It is not enabled by default, but companies can enable it if they want. And the reasoning behind that is when you search something in Bing, not only will it give you public search data, but it will also search data that's sitting in your Office 365 environment. So basically give you one holistic view of all the data within the company or outside the company, right? Makes sense, right?
Yeah.
However, you're opening the door for if you had just one door that you had to secure before, now you have two doors that you have to secure. One is your, Microsoft 365 account, but then the other one is your Bing, any vulnerability in the Bing system itself, right? But that's not the real problem. The real problem is companies are configuring Microsoft 365 as the single source of truth when it comes to identity recognition or identification or credentials, right? So basically, one place to check whether you need access or not. And since Azure AD is available worldwide, that's an easy thing to use for this. Now, what happens is Bing plugs into Azure AD using APIs. And Azure AD is, by the way, what drives the Microsoft 365 system. So what happens is companies, they end up giving API access to Bing and a few others. Like, I know Salesforce has it. I know HubSpot has it. I mean, pretty much any major application developer out there will give you some sort of integration using APIs with Microsoft 365. It is the responsibility of the customer to control what systems have that API access. This is the next big vector of attack that we're noticing is you end up giving too many systems API access to your central source of truth for identity. And when that happens, now these systems can have vulnerabilities or they can be hacked, and then people can from there get access to your data, which is in Azure AD. And that's kind of like what happened with Bing. Companies that were giving Bing API access to their Microsoft 365 data, this was so that they can have maybe consolidated, search information. It makes life maybe a little bit easier for their users, but then they opened a whole new doorway that bad guys can use to attack. The moral of the story here is don't give access to applications without understanding if there is a business case for it. Only give access when there is a business case. In Bing's instance here, it wasn't even the Bing search, it was some other Bing component that was like, I think gamification related that some companies might be giving access. My question would be why? Is it really important for your users to get access to that gaming system in Bing? I mean, they're there to work. Microsoft 365 is for work, right? If it was a consumer side product, then okay, fine, that's how you make money. But in this case, I don't understand. What happened here, I think, is a lot of companies gave access without understanding what it means to give somebody API access to your system. Now, it's easy to miss because when you give API access to a system, there's just one box that pops up, and it has a bunch of check marks that, hey, you're giving this system access to this, and this. Nobody really reads that stuff, right? People just hit okay. Yeah, I want to give access, right? Who reads that? Right? You should read it, but nobody really does, right?
Right.
It's like that fine print. Nobody really cares or reads it, right?
Right.
What you end up doing is when you hit OK, you're really giving that system access to all those things that are listed. There is identity information. So, for example, it has to be able to read Azure AD. So all of a sudden, this third-party system will know what your email addresses are in your organization, how many users you have in your organization, what are their names. I mean, it's going to read all that information, right? Who their managers are. Now, think about it. If I knew who somebody's manager is, I can craft an email trying to fish them for sending them money, and I pretend to be their manager, right? Hey, and we've seen these attacks, right? Hey, I'm so and so. John, can you send me money? I'm in a bind. I'll explain later. We've seen those emails, right? So now it's so easy for the bad guys to use that information for phishing or whatever have you. Always pay attention when giving API access to your Microsoft 365 resources. Don't just do it without paying attention to what the application is and if there's a business case for doing that. If somebody can make a business case, great, do it. We've had instances where we've, in consulting with customers, where customers have said, oh, hey, it's so-and-so third-party provider, and they need this access. And we don't have a problem giving them limited access. But in a lot of these cases, these applications are requesting more access than they need. And in that case, it's our duty to tell the customer, hey, these are the repercussions of this. This application should not need more than this much access, but it's requiring this much access. This is a problem. This means when that application gets hacked or breached or whatever, now all of a sudden it's going to be able to breach into your Microsoft 365 data as well. In this world of interconnected things, it's important to keep an eye on what you give access to. And APIs are one of those things that give access to external systems. So it's always a good idea to pay close attention to what type of access some application is requesting and whether that makes business sense or not.
Wow, good Lord, that's not necessarily. Well, it is scary because, like you said, I know I don't look at those things, but it bears to question how many other cracks, if you will, are out there that haven't been, found as a result of this. As a matter of fact, I was reading that with for Bing, they think what kind of exasperated it might have been the fact that with the launch of its with its AI powered Bing chat and everything, that now it kind of widely pushed the exploit. And I'm wondering how much. I mean, of course we don't know, but somehow these bad guys are able to figure it out and say, ooh, we found something. Do you think and this is a sidebar conversation, I don't want it to go too far off, but do you think now with the popularity of AI and now that search engines are using AI-based foundations for their search, and as these, as people start to gravitate towards it, and do you think we're going to see more stuff like this where it's like, hey, we found another, crack in the armor?
Yeah, so we are going to see more cracks and more people utilizing these cracks in the armor. But let me put it this way. If your policies and procedures and controls were correctly set up to begin with, you shouldn't have much to worry about, right? If you already had process in place when you give API access to something, and how much access, or how do you determine how much access that application should require, and you only approve it when it makes a business case. When you have some of these processes and controls in place, then you really don't have to worry about the AI. Basically, take the example of Bing and their, ChatGPT integration. If you don't give Bing API access to your Microsoft 365 environment. ChatGPT can't just magically over thin air get access to information. Somebody has to give it API access for it to be able to find a crack in the armor, right? If there is no connection, in other words, if there is no pipe, water can't flow over in that pipe. There is no pipe, right? It's the problem is in the configurations, and I see this in a lot of IT admins where one of the department heads will come to them and say, hey, we're trying to integrate so-and-so application. Can you go ahead and approve API access for this? And the admin goes in and they, click the link and they give, they get that little prompt. It shows them what kind of application access that application is requesting. They don't pay attention to what type of access it's requesting. They just hit OK because the department head told me to go ahead and give them application, give them access. The problem is that department head does not know what type of access. It's the IT admin's job to get with that department head or some other people in that department to figure out what type of access is needed. And if the type of access it's requesting is more than what should be necessary, then it's the IT admin's job to pull the plug and say, no, I'm not going to do it unless you get with the application guys and tell them to reduce their request for access, and then I will approve it. Because if I do this, these are the repercussions. For example, maybe an application only needs read access, but it's actually requesting write access as well. That's a big no-no. If in this case, like even for Bing, like if you're integrating Bing with your Microsoft 365 data so that you can give people a single pane of glass for all search within the business or outside the business, then all Bing needs is read access. But if it's requesting write access, which it's not, but I'm just giving you an example, right. If when you go through that integration and it's asking for write access, it's the IT admin's job to say, no, I'm not going to approve this. Because now I have to get with, my process is this. If it needs this much access, I have to go and get approval from these entities. Maybe I have to run it by legal because there are some legal repercussions. I mean, think about it. You may have customer data in your Microsoft 365, and if you give Bing access to that and somebody cracks through Bing and gets access to that data, whose responsibility is that? People are not going to say, oh, well, Bing did that. No, people are going to say that, that company that has our data got breached and they did this. They're the ones who are responsible, right? Because at the end of the day, Bing can only access stuff that you give it access to. You're the ones who gave it access to that.
That's good. I didn't know that.
So,
that is really
always pay attention when giving an application API access. I know there are some applications that use AI that request that because they have to get access to the data to be able to run some analysis on data, right? So these analytic applications require access. So always be on the lookout for this. Now, having said that, there's a whole industry around this. There are companies that create utilities to consolidate and list out all the third-party applications that have access to your Microsoft 365 data. So you might want to subscribe to something like that, or just go into your Active Directory and see what other applications have access to it, and that should be easy. So and make it a process out of this, right? So have it like maybe once a year. Your IT admin goes through the list and goes through and verifies what applications have access to the APIs and what level of access they have.
I mean, even for a person that's non-techie, I am techie, but not as techie. This is good information, especially in the current landscape that we're in. These are, legal, tax accounting. I mean, who else? Financial institutions. These are things they have to
always look at. Make sure you set your schedule. You set out your process, like schedule it for like maybe 1 or more years down the line, where every year somebody is in charge of going through this checklist and making sure proper applications have proper level of access to your system, to your Microsoft 365 data. So it doesn't matter if the data is in the cloud or on your local servers. You're still in charge of protecting it.
Mm.
And that's a misconception that some people have is, oh, we'll put it in the cloud and then let Microsoft worry about it. No, Microsoft's compliance requirements are, we will protect the data from to a certain extent, but then it's up to the customer to protect the data further. So there are some customer responsibilities there. So make sure you get ahead of that. Now, if you have some compliance requirements, a lot of these compliance requirements will talk about these types of things and a cadence that you need to go through the checklists. So hopefully, that'll help some people out. If you haven't, check your Azure AD to see if third-party apps have access and what type of access, and you can revoke access from your Azure AD portal as well. Maybe we'll make another video on how to do that. That's a little more technical, so it'll take a little more time. But hopefully it helps some people out. And if you haven't subscribed already, subscribe, push that bell button so you get notified when a new video comes out. I know we're publishing a lot of videos, whether they are the short videos, the remixes, or the longer videos. And if you have some suggestions, feel free to reach out to us.
Please.
Have a good one, everyone.
Have a good one. Enjoy Saturday.